The night was quiet but heavy with an unshakable tension, the kind of stillness that only comes before something life-changing happens. The streets were almost empty, dim streetlights casting long shadows as the city seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the distance, the low hum of car engines blended with the faint rustle of leaves, but inside a small, dimly lit cafe tucked away in a narrow street, an entirely different storm was building. Shen Yue sat at the farthest corner table, her hands curled around a half-empty cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She was not dressed like the radiant actress fans usually saw on screens and red carpets. Instead, her simple hoodie and cap shielded her face, her eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. Anyone who saw her at that moment would sense the weight she was carrying, the kind of burden that no amount of fame or applause could lighten. Hidden inside her bag was something that had been waiting for the right moment, a folded letter written in a rush of emotions that had been bottled up for far too long. The cafe door opened and Dylan Wang stepped in, his tall frame instantly drawing attention, even though he was dressed in all black, a cap pulled low over his eyes. He moved with purpose, scanning the room until his gaze fell on her. In that split second, neither smiled, neither spoke, but the air between them seemed to ripple with unspoken words. He crossed the room and sat opposite her, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, they simply sat there, the silence between them louder than any argument. Then Shen Yue reached into her bag and pulled out the letter. Her fingers trembled slightly as she slid it across the table. Dylan hesitated before taking it, his eyes flicking up to meet hers. She looked away, almost afraid of what his reaction would be. The words inside that letter were not simple lines on paper. They were a plea, a desperate confession written in the rawest truth she had ever dared to share. She had written it late at night, when sleep refused to come, when memories of what they had been through together flooded her mind. It spoke of moments the public never saw, of quiet sacrifices, of misunderstandings that had cut deeper than either of them had admitted. It asked for something that was not forgiveness exactly, but something harder to give: understanding. Dylan read in silence, his eyes moving slowly over each sentence, as if absorbing not just the meaning but the pain behind it. At one point, his jaw tightened, and his grip on the paper grew firm. Outside, the faint drizzle had turned into a steady rain, drops streaking down the cafe windows. The sound seemed to echo the heaviness of the moment. When he finally looked up, there was no anger in his eyes, but there was something else, something raw and unguarded. He leaned forward, lowering his voice so only she could hear. His words were not rehearsed. They tumbled out like they had been waiting years to be spoken. He told her that he had always known she was holding back, that he had felt the distance even when they were standing inches apart. He admitted that there were things he had done and said that had made her retreat, moments when he should have fought harder to keep her close but did not. The rain outside began to fall harder, the sound almost drowning out their voices. Shen Yue's eyes glistened, not with the glamour of red carpet lights, but with the raw shine of emotions finally breaking free. She whispered that she had not sent the letter earlier because she feared it would end things between them, but now she felt it was the only way to save what was left. Dylan reached across the table, his hand hovering for a second before finally covering hers. It was a gesture so small yet so powerful that it seemed to dissolve years of unspoken pain. In that quiet cafe, with the storm raging outside, two people who had been bound by silence and pride finally allowed themselves to be seen for who they truly were. The moment did not end in grand declarations or sweeping gestures. It ended in something far more real, a promise exchanged without words, one that only they understood, the kind of promise that could either rebuild everything or leave it shattered forever. But as Dylan left the cafe later that night, the letter tucked safely in his pocket, one thing was clear: the world might soon hear about Shen Yue's secret plea, and when it did, it would not just be a headline, it would be the kind of revelation that would change how everyone saw them, and perhaps how they saw themselves. Here's part 2 of Shen Yue's secret plea to Dylan Wang exposed. Very lengthy, emotional, and packed with mind-blowing scenes, as you requested. The air in the small, dimly lit room seemed heavier than it should have been, every tick of the clock echoing like a drumbeat. Dylan sat at the far end of the table, hands clasped tightly, his gaze locked on the folded piece of paper between them. That paper, crumpled at the edges, worn as if it had been held too many times, was the reason they were both here tonight. Shen Yue stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, the faint tremor in her hands betraying the calm she tried so hard to maintain. Outside, the rain pressed against the glass, each drop sounding like a warning they both ignored. She turned finally, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment Dylan thought he saw something that shook him. Not anger, not sadness, but a kind of desperation that made his chest tighten. He reached for the paper, but she stepped forward, her voice low, almost breaking. "Read it slowly," she whispered, "and don't look at me until you're done." He hesitated, his fingers brushing the fragile surface, before unfolding it. The words inside were written in her familiar handwriting, uneven in places, as if written in a rush or in the middle of a sleepless night. As he read, his expression shifted. At first confusion, then recognition, and finally, something much deeper, pain. The letter was not just a plea, it was a confession. Shen Yue had written about nights she couldn't sleep because of the silence between them, about moments on set when his smile had felt too far away, about the way she felt herself fading from his world while the cameras kept rolling. She wrote of times when she had wanted to speak, to tell him everything, but had swallowed her words for the sake of peace. And then, near the end, a single line that stopped him cold. "I am not asking you to love me back, Dylan. I am asking you not to forget me." The silence, after he finished, was unbearable. Shen Yue stood still, her breathing unsteady, waiting for him to say something, anything. Dylan rose from his chair slowly, the paper still in his hand. He stepped toward her, but she took a half step back, her eyes darting toward the floor as if afraid to see his reaction. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice cracking in a way she had never heard before. She shook her head, tears threatening to fall. "Because you were happy," she murmured, "or at least you looked like you were. And I couldn't take that away from you." Dylan's jaw tightened, his mind flashing back to countless moments, the way she had walked away after scenes ended, the times she had laughed but not quite reached his eyes, the quiet goodbyes that had felt like something more. He reached out, his fingers brushing her arm. She didn't pull away this time. "You think I could ever forget you?" he asked, his tone both sharp and tender. "Every day I've been carrying you with me, Shen Yue, even when I didn't know how to say it, even when I thought it was too late." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she looked at him for the first time in what felt like years, without the shield of performance, without the weight of expectations. And in that unguarded second, the air between them shifted. The storm outside grew louder, as if urging them to make a choice before the moment passed forever. Dylan took another step, closing the space with quiet understanding. His voice was barely more than a whisper, gently against the seat, but it carried the weight of every unspoken word between them. In this small cocoon of safety, if you needed me to stay, away from the prying eyes, you should have known I never left. She felt something she hadn't felt. The city outside, unaware of the storm that had just broken inside the room. Do you ever feel trapped by all this? Even more addictive for viewers, nodding toward the window, toward the city that would soon wake with its relentless demands. Dylan's lips pressed into a thin line. Every day. Fame isn't freedom. It's another kind of cage. His voice was laced with a rare honesty. But moments like this, when I can protect someone I care about, it makes the struggle worth it. A soft smile tugged at Shen Yue's lips. "It does, doesn't it? To have someone willing to fight the storm with you." He glanced at her, the faintest spark of something tender flickering in his eyes. "You won't have to face it alone. Not now." The car slowed as it approached a quiet building, a safe place Dylan trusted. He parked carefully, turning to face her fully for the first time since the chaos had begun. "Do you want to come inside? Or would you rather I take you straight home?" His voice was gentle, giving her space to choose. Shen Yue hesitated, then nodded softly. I want to catch my breath a little more. I don't want to go back to the spotlight just yet." Dylan smiled, that rare, genuine smile that lit up his whole face. "Then let's stay here a while. No cameras, no noise, just quiet." As they stepped out into the night air, the tension seemed to lift further, replaced by a growing warmth between them. The world outside could wait. Tonight, it was just the two of them. Two souls finding refuge in each other's strength. In that moment, Shen Yue realized something profound. The chaos, the endless scrutiny, the relentless chase. None of it mattered when someone chose to be your shield, your calm in the storm. Dylan hadn't just saved her from the paparazzi. He had saved a piece of her from breaking completely. And perhaps, in the quiet aftermath of a harrowing night, something new was beginning. A story not of chasing headlines or dodging flashes, but of trust, of protection, and maybe even of something deeper. As the night stretched on, the city's lights dimmed behind them, and in the sanctuary they found, Shen Yue finally allowed herself to hope. Hope that no matter how fierce the storm, she would never face it alone again. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the quiet room. Shen Yue sat on the edge of the bed, the night's events replaying in her mind. She felt different, lighter somehow. The fear and pressure hadn't disappeared, but Dylan's presence had given her a new strength. Dylan was quietly packing a small bag nearby, his movements calm but deliberate. He glanced at her, offering a small smile. "You're stronger than you think." She met his gaze, a genuine smile breaking through. "And I'm grateful that you reminded me." Outside, the city was waking up, unaware of the silent bond that had deepened overnight. Two people, caught in a world of chaos, had found a moment of peace, and perhaps the beginning of something neither had expected. As they stepped out together into the morning light, Shen Yue knew one thing for certain. With Dylan by her side, she was no longer alone. In a world full of flashing cameras and endless noise, sometimes the greatest strength is simply knowing someone will stand by you no matter what. If you felt the strength of Dylan's protection and Shen Yue's courage tonight, hit that like button, share this story with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt moments behind the scenes of your favorite stars. Comment below. Who else do you think would step up like Dylan? We want to hear your thoughts.